Nelson Peltz has lost his proxy battle for the Walt Disney Company, and the Restoring Magic social media and website has been deleted. News outlets are reporting that he lost 2-1, but that's not quite how it happened. Let's talk about that Disney spin here on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place. It is a wonderful morning, and why? Because there's a bright and shining Vash Sky right over there on the right-hand panel. Vash, how's it going today?
Hi, I am doing very, very well. It's been a busy time here at That Park Place, but with no shortage of things to talk about, it makes for one very interesting conversation, and hopefully our viewers will like what we have to say.
Yep, very true. Let's get into that story. This one, I don't know if you heard it, but the Restore the Magic website and social media accounts appeared down after Nelson Peltz fails to secure the Disney board seat. And that word appear has done a lot of heavy lifting for us on That Park Place lately. So we want to give that the most valuable player, the employee of the month, right there for the word appear. Nelson Peltz was unsuccessful in acquiring a Walt Disney Company board of directors seat. That is true. Neither was his running mate, former Disney chief financial officer Jay Rasulo. While accusations abound that things may not have been handled in an above-board way in regards to vote leaks and narrative manipulation, there is no chance that Peltz or Rasulo will be on the board this year. Well, I wouldn't say that. They did lose the proxy battle, but there's always a chance that the Disney company just decides to throw them in there for no reason, or maybe a big investment reason. As a result, some have begun to notice that their Restore the Magic campaign, managed by Trian Group, has gone the way of the dodo. The Restore the Magic website, as well as social media accounts, were gone from public accessibility on April 3rd, the same day that Nelson Peltz discovered he would not be a Disney board member. Here's some images from Restore the Magic. While many might conclude that this is the end of Nelson Peltz and Trian attempting to gain access to the Walt Disney Company Board of Directors, that might be a bit presumptuous. Yeah, we are going to talk about how that is a little bit presumptuous. I could ask you this question, Vash, and sometimes I have a tendency to ask people questions when really I just want them to say the thing that I want them to say. I'm going to say this thing. If Restoring Magic was still up and Nelson Peltz was still running those social media accounts, I think he would still have to file things with the SEC every time they were updated. So there's really no point in those being up at this point. Also, he is ending his proxy fight, quote unquote, for now, but I don't think that means he's going away. There are some indications. Well, we'll talk about those indications in just a moment. It's to his advantage right now to not have to update that website over and over again. But what we will go to is this story out of Deadline. Look at this. Disney fends off Nelson Peltz after bitter proxy fight as shareholders back company board. Was it bitter? Vash, would you characterize this fight as bitter?
I wouldn't have characterized this fight as bitter like that. I mean, some people were attacking others in a way that was most unprofessional and embarrassing, and others were making their case for why they should be part of this proxy battle based on the merits and the financial acumen of the whole thing right there. So, bitter is a word, but I wouldn't necessarily use it to describe this.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. What's interesting is Bob Iger and the Disney Company board used mean words on a frequent basis. They basically called their opponents stupid, and they also said, "Well, it must be that Ike Perlmutter was angry about this entire thing." There were no comments available from Ike Perlmutter on the situation, so all they had is their implication that Ike Perlmutter hates Bob Iger. I think the only public statements by Ike Perlmutter about Bob Iger were after Ike Perlmutter was laid off. That Perlmutter came back and said, "No, I was fired." So I don't know. There's an assumption that anyone that doesn't get along with Bob Iger hates Bob Iger. Maybe that is a reasonable assumption, but the Disney company was putting a lot of emphasis on the idea, no, they must hate us. There must be some other reason other than this 130 pages of business analysis that they put together saying that maybe this company isn't run as well as it should be.
And we saw a lot of people carry the water for that on Twitter and other places. And it was all very kind of unusual because there were really no indications. If you really looked down deep into this, if you really did the investigative work, which a lot of great journalists did, and I know we absorbed a lot of that coverage as it was going on, it really didn't indicate to any of us that Peltz was in this to fight back with Perlmutter and get one over on the board. It looked like Perlmutter was more he was more concerned about his shares and the stock going down and not having sustainable growth at the company level than anything else. But I guess it's just us.
Yeah, that's true. And he's been described as a corporate raider as well, which is fascinating. There have been instances where Nelson Peltz has come in and said, you know what you need to do? You need to sell off this part of your business. You need to do that. But he generally starts with that as opposed
Right.
to coming in and trying to surprise people like, oh, what I secretly wanted to do. He comes in and he makes his case and his white papers. I don't think his white papers change after because I'm going to say this. I think that if there was any change in what they presented to the Walt Disney Company board and what ended up being public, they would use that against Nelson Peltz. If he came in and said, let's sell part of Disney, I think they would clearly have used that to their advantage because they've shown that they will use any advantage, especially a narrative one, that they can take, even if it's not quite true.
In the Trion
Uh,
presentation that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jonas.
Oh yeah, and of course the I'll just throw this in here. Nelson Peltz also does not have a history of firing CEOs when he gets on the board. He
He
tends to work with CEOs.
he said multiple times, including in the Financial Times article, that he wanted to help Iger. He wanted to help him out and to run this company. And during that Trian presentation, Jay Rasulo and Nelson Peltz were pretty clear that they wanted to maintain the Disney flywheel and get the creative engine rolling again, so that that flywheel could be as productive as it possibly could be. If he was looking to sell out parts of the company, that necessarily goes against that thinking and mentality. Unlike Blackwell's, who was very open about, hey, we want to go ahead and split this stuff up for parts. That was the kind of juxtaposition between the two. Proxy battlers.
Hmm. Very good. Now, we want to get into this article. This is out of Deadline. Disney fends off Nelson Peltz after bitter proxy fight as shareholders back company board by Jill Goldsmith. Disney has succeeded in barring Nelson Peltz from its board of directors as shareholders at the company's hotly anticipated annual meeting today, that being 2 days ago, voted in its slate of 12 nominees, fending off outsiders. It was a months-long, bitter, and costly fight. The numbers are preliminary, with official results still yet to be announced, but Disney said its full board slate was elected by a substantial margin over the nominees of Trian Group and Blackwell's. Trian, Peltz's investment firm, nominated the activist investor along with former Disney executive Jay Rasulo for the board. Another firm, Blackwell's, had three nominees that never got much traction. According to a few stats Disney provided, there's the explanation here. Disney provided this was Peltz's biggest ever loss in a proxy fight, and he's engaged in a few. Peltz received less than 31% of the vote. CEO Bob Iger, also on the board, of course, had 94% support. We'll break these down one by one after we read all of them. Peltz lost to Disney director Maria Elena Lagomasino, although we did find out from Mark Parker that she prefers to be called Mel Lagomasino, by 2-1, and Rasulo lost to her by 5-1. Trian had advised shareholders to withhold votes from Lagomasino. In a key show of support, some 75% of Disney's large retail shareholder base backed the company's slate. Disney has a few big institutional investors, but some 40% of the stock is owned by individuals, a big swing factor here. That's fascinating. So at this point, they're saying that it's only 60% institutionally held. There was a time when we thought it was 75, figures close to 65 at some point. I wonder why it's only 60% institutionally held at this point. But let's talk about this right here. Peltz
Please.
received less than 31% of the vote. That must mean that everyone preferred Alina Alagomasino to Nelson Peltz. Or does it?
I don't. I don't think that's quite what it says there, Jonas, as we have been reminded over and over again by the great Lou Wasserman's Ghost when analyzing this. 31% of the vote doesn't necessarily mean what it says it means, because it's 31% of shares that voted. And because these institutional shareholders hold so much of these outstanding shares, that's why it's represented as 31%, but not necessarily. It's not a one-to-one vote, to put it simply. But Jonas, maybe you can elaborate on this.
Well, yes. If this were a standard election, like you would for a political office where you have one person versus another person, let's say one is a Whig and one is a Tory. I don't know. I'm making up two parties that are not Democrats and Republicans because that's already been overlaid on this battle in too many ways. So it's not that you vote for your Whig candidate and therefore your other candidate doesn't get a vote. It's not that you vote for your Tory candidate and therefore your other candidate doesn't get a vote. Everyone's name is listed on the form. And so you would have to withhold from Mary Elena Lagomasino and vote for Peltz in order for this to work. If you voted for Mary Elena Lagomasino and you voted for Peltz and you didn't uncheck any of the boxes for the rest of the board, your vote does not count in any way. They will throw out that vote, which is fascinating to think about. By their own rules, they will completely trash your vote if you forget to uncheck one of the Disney board members when voting for Peltz or Rasula, which is I would say that favors the incumbent directors. Of course, when I say uncheck Mary Elena Lagomasino, that is because it is delivered to each of these people pre-checked for the Disney candidates. In many cases, on the electronic ones, we're hearing reports of it being pre-checked, and therefore you have to uncheck and then check Peltz. So if you voted for Peltz but did not uncheck Mary Elena Lagomasino, it doesn't count. By the way, those proxy ballots are not marked in any way that says this is the seat that Peltz is going for. So please don't vote for that one. Yeah, I would say that 30% of the shares that were voted going towards someone who is the anti-Iger, even though this is not a fight against Iger, I would say that 30% of those voting shares going against him is an indication that there is a problem, more than it's saying that, oh, no, 60% of people obviously voted for Mary Elena Lagomasino. I would say that it's actually a problem to only have 60% of people voting for that candidate when 94% voted for Bob Iger.
That is a very good point, for sure. And there were some, let's say, oddities connected to Mel Lagomasino, in that I guess State Street may have withheld their vote for her and Parker. Is that what happened? One of the larger institutional shareholders.
Yes, that's true. They did not necessarily vote for Peltz or Rasulo, but they didn't vote for Parker. And I'm not sure about Lagomasino whether or not she was included in that, but I'm sure they did not vote to keep Parker on the board, which is fascinating, because it's like they're saying, just because this other person is correct doesn't mean that you're right.
That's a really interesting thing right there. So there is definitely some level of dissension there for sure, even amongst the institutional shareholders, and it was profound when ISS actually came out in favor of Peltz. The fact that happened, the fact that he got 31% of the votes from those shares, is quite astonishing, really. I mean, I don't believe he made that many inroads last time. I believe now obviously he had dipped out at that point, but I think he only got like
Yes.
less than 20% last time. So he made inroads for sure. And look, if this company does any worse here, which by the way, the stock price, immediately dropped as soon as it was revealed that he wasn't going to get in, and has continued to drop ever since. If this company doesn't necessarily get back on track and next year rolls around and he's all ready for a battle, I don't know if they can necessarily fend him off, because it seemingly Iger called in every single favor to hold him off this time.
That's a very good point. And I'll also add that we're going to find out what the true value of the company without the threat of Peltz is in the coming weeks here. I've heard some people predict. I'm not going to get into the prediction just because we've said no financial advice on this channel several times. I don't want anyone to take what we're saying as that kind of advice. But this article, published on April 4th, so not that long ago, Nelson Peltz reacts to losing proxy fight against the Walt Disney Company. If they don't keep their promises, you'll see me again. This by John F. Trent. I highly recommend reading the article. He did appear on CNBC again. He said, I hope this is not a redo of last year where we pulled out, gave management a chance, and the stock went down from roughly 120, there's a familiar number, down to 79. I hope that doesn't happen this time. Whether we stay or not, we don't make those kind of announcements. I hope Bob Iger can keep his promises. Actually, I hope Bob can keep his promises. He's got this cool voice. I just like the way that he talks. I hope they can do all the things they assured us they are going to do, and we'll only watch and wait. If they do it, they won't hear from me again. If they don't, Jim, you may be seeing me on your show next year doing this same thing again. So it's really up to management. It's up to the board. It's up to whether they do what they say they want to do, or if it's the same old story again. So I think we're going to hear from Nelson Peltz next year. I don't really expect that much out of this company this year. There's nothing that they have that is going to be deliverable in any quick fashion that I think is going to turn around the stock price. The only thing they have is the succession process, which needs to take time, because I've only heard that they have just now started interviewing candidates, and it's supposed to be all 12 members of the board that interview those candidates before they make their decision. Vash, what do you think about all this? Do you think Peltz is coming back? Do you think that Bob Iger is going to turn things around here, or what else is going to happen?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's pretty clear. We've looked at the we've looked at the areas in which they generate revenue, and the areas in which they're lacking. And at least in our opinion, obviously no financial advice here, but at least in our opinion, we don't necessarily see this being turned around in 1 year's time. There's a lot of open questions about some of the strategies that Iger has announced. And by the way, a lot of this stuff that Peltz was talking about, where about what management will do, what they say, a lot of that was only because Peltz offered it up a lot of the times, or forced them to reveal those strategies, in which they had done previously. So Peltz has had already an influence on the company to the benefit of shareholders, I would think. But I don't see him turning this thing around. We know they're going to have kind of a rough box office this year for multiple reasons. We know that streaming, while it might be profitable, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a profitable enterprise when you talk about the sunk cost or the investment into that sector. We might know what more they're doing at the parks level at D23 here. We've already seen signs of that now that the SIFTOD thing is settled. There's a lot of moving parts, and I just don't see them coming all together before the time that Peltz can reemerge once again.
It's true. There is not enough in the pipeline before we get to, say, October of this coming year. But we'll see. And of course, go ahead and subscribe here to That Park Place for that. But like this video if this has been helpful to you, if it's helpful for you to see through some of the spin here when they say Lagomasino beat Peltz 2-1. That is intentionally sandbagging a number that is not quite accurate. And I'll say it again, it's 30% of shareholders saying that Peltz should be on that board. And Bob Iger did say on CNBC yesterday morning, as of the release of this video, he said that they're doing just fine. And when David Faber asked if he needs to do anything to appease those people, he pretended like he had been listening, and that, oh yeah, we're seeing consistent results from a lot of the shareholders. Really didn't say anything at all about trying to appease those stockholders, those shareholders who want to see change at the company. Of course, leave a comment below. Tell us what you think of this whole situation. Do you like Peltz? Do you wish it was just someone else that was coming in? Is it not Peltz that you want to see in there? Is it someone else that you want to see on that board? Or do you want to see a change and see the Iger of 2005 coming in and wowing us all, buying another Pixar if one of those is out there? Let us know in the comment section down below. And of course, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.